I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. All right, we are here for the Keys of Enoch, key 3-1-3, pages 467 to 478. So let's read the key. It's not as long as last week. The keys to future luminaries tell us that molecular biology will reveal that molecular changes in enzymes change with, quote, the arc of light patterns, end quote, which are, quote, living grid mechanisms, end quote, aligned with polarization focus over the third eye. The third eye gives telethought distribution within compatible networks with spatial provisions. Excuse me. Oh, that was pointing down. All right, so we are going to get into it, but let me welcome some folks. Auntie is here first. She says hi with the peace sign. That's my favorite Auntie. And Adrian is here and says, let's go. They are part of the best live tribe on YouTube, bar none. So for those of you watching from the cloud, please feel free to say hello. You will be welcomed as long as you're appropriate. And also shout out to the replay gang. So what we're going to do is to take Hertalk, JJ Hertalk is the one who wrote this, take his excessively esoteric work to something that's not soteric. It is obvious, it became obvious about halfway through that this work is a mix of Christian dispensationalism and some Jewish Zionism thrown in there, maybe even a little Mormonism. But we can take the opportunity to translate and study these keys to learn something and maybe to see what the global powers are up to on their religious fronts. The full reading of the key is available on my channel. It is unlisted, so you have to use the link. It's for educational purposes only. You can watch it before, after, or actually not at all, because I'm going to read highlights. Thank you, Adrian. All right, so let's get into the highlights, because now they're talking about something that's right up my alley, the third eye. All right, number 1, verse 1. This key explains how the people of light are polarized by means of a higher radiation of light projected into their third eye area. This allows them to see beyond the limitations of the visible light, typical of our system of relativity. Shining light into your forehead. Okay, I am intrigued. Let's keep going. Therefore, telethought communication is the ability to penetrate the different energy fields by means of a superior mental energy via a clear signal focused through the third eye, which is directly connected with gravitational waves. So when I read this, I was like, gravitational waves? You lost me. Spoiler alert, before I really get into it, Hertalk does equate the pineal gland with the third eye. So, you know, we're going to be doing that a lot here. But it's very confusing when he says the third eye is connected to gravitational waves, or it uses gravitational waves. Let's talk about what the pineal gland actually is. Everybody's got one. You've all got one. The pineal gland is a small pine cone shaped endocrine gland. Endocrine. You're going to have to remember that it's endocrine. Okay. That means hormones. Endocrine gland. It's about the size of a grain of rice. So it looks just like a teeny tiny pine cone. Its primary function is regulating biological timing. The way things are timed. Okay. And regulating all of the hormones. So it is central command for all of your hormones, okay? It's in the very dead center of your brain, right in the very middle where the two halves of the thalamus come together, okay? The pineal gland's primary hormone that it secretes is melatonin. So timing, okay? Melatonin regulates your sleep and wake cycles. It also regulates your puberty timing, okay? It also modulates your immune system. I mean, it is central command. It is the king of the hormone producers, okay? It does operate sort of on light. It is photonic, okay? Because light hits your retina and it sends a signal to say it's light outside. We don't need to be asleep, okay? When it gets dark, then we adjust. So it keeps adjusting the melatonin accordingly, which affects your blood pressure, your respiration, all kinds of things. Did you guys know that's why you yawn when you're tired? Because melatonin lowers your respiration. So if you are up and around and doing stuff while you're tired and your respirations are lowered, you have to get more oxygen. So your body keeps yawning to get more oxygen in. You just need to go to bed. So the pineal gland it's not an ordinary gland. It's really not like the other glands. It is so sensitive to photonic light that the pineal gland is made up of cells that are almost exactly like retinal photoreceptor cells. So it has eye cells inside of it. Interestingly enough, people from ancient times have been referring to the third eye. And where they put it is, you go straight in, you're going to hit the pineal gland. But when they try to represent it, it's always a pine cone. Isn't that, I mean, we're talking ancient times. They represented the third eye as a pine cone. And it has eye cells in it because it receives the light. Interesting, right? So the vision cells are in the pineal gland, specifically the ones that see light, okay? Another unique quality of the pineal gland is that it can calcify from something called brain sand. Kid you not, it's called brain sand. You can look it up. But brain sand is a type of calcium deposit, right? It can get in it is just naturally in your cerebrospinal fluid. So that means it's in your brain, the fluid that cushions your brain. But this type of calcium they're tiny crystals, okay? Little tiny crystals. And then what happens in the pineal gland, they form layered crystal structures, which they're supposed to. So this is a gland that regulates all your timing, all your other hormones, and it operates on light and crystals. This is not woo-woo. This is biology, guys. Look it up. Look it up. Okay. So you get these layered crystal structures, but if you get too much, it overwhelms the gland and then the gland stops working properly. So you can imagine what happens if the gland that regulates all of the hormones and its hormone is melatonin, which is your sleep and wake cycles, your blood pressure, all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of important that it operates correctly. Okay. So this calcite crystal, okay, is piezoelectric. These specific crystals are piezoelectric. Do you guys remember piezoelectric from like Tesla? Okay. Piezoelectric means that it creates an electrical charge. It's the same tech as a quartz watch. It operates the same way. Or ultrasound machines that use specific crystals. So in watches, they use quartz crystals to create piezoelectric charges. So your pineal gland uses calcite crystals to create a piezoelectric charge. And you can literally see the crystals in your pineal gland on x-rays and CT scans. I mean, I kind of think it's cool. Yeah. Yes, sleep and stuff. Okay. So all of that, that's biology. All of that is fact. Okay. Now, what I'm going to talk about is something that's it's debated. Okay. It is debated. Some people believe this, some people don't. It's debated, but the ancients knew that the pineal gland across multiple civilizations, independent of each other, they all used iconography of the pine cone. They all talked about the light. They talked about the sun and ascension. Now, the reason it's debated is because other archaeologists are like, no, that's not what they meant. But I'll get into it. The pine cone showed up in places that never saw a pine tree. How, in Egypt, do we have depictions of the pine cone with concepts of light and ascension and seeing the gods and Ra, the sun, the light, the bringer of light? So the pine cones were held in the hand. So when we see these depictions, they're in the hand, kind of like this. Okay. Anunnaki, pine cones, by the way, in the hand. In a lot of the depictions, they're holding it on their forehead or up by their forehead. It's usually like a side view. They're holding it up by their forehead where the third eye would be. Okay. What we would call the third eye. They didn't necessarily call it the third eye, but they were held in the hand near the head. They were always related to receiving divine knowledge. That was how you received divine knowledge from the gods, was the pine cone of your forehead. Okay. So this idea of the pine cone and ascension and light and getting divine knowledge crosses Kemet, Egypt, later, Assyria, Rome before Christianity, Greece before Christianity, India, and even the Druids in ancient Britain before it was even colonized. So this is hundreds and thousands of years BC that all of these cultures are talking about the pine cone on your head. So in India and places like that, they referred to it as the third eye. So we just generally equate pineal gland with third eye. So back to her talk. Okay. Her talk is saying that the pineal gland is directly connected with gravitational waves. So we all know what a pineal gland is now. We know what it is and how it operates and what the ancients said about it. Okay. Now, to be clear, there is no biological, neurological, or physical connection between the pineal gland and gravitational waves. Like, quite literally, zero connection. I couldn't even figure out a way to make that work. The ripples of gravitational waves pass through everything all the time, literally everything all the time, because we're in gravity. So gravity kind of acts like water a little bit. So we get these gravitational waves. Okay. It passes through literally everything with no effect on literally anything that operates on crystals. Right? No effect on watches, ultrasounds, GPS satellites. Everything works the same way, and they're not ever affected by gravitational waves. Also, when scientists measure high incidences of gravitational waves, it doesn't affect people's third eye. Like people don't start having visions and whatnot. Okay. So, sorry, I have a screen acting funky. Okay. So, uh, everything works the same way. Nothing is ever affected by gravitational waves besides the Earth. The Earth itself at times will react to solar flares and gravitational waves, and it will respond. A reaction, right? A reaction is a reaction with um, Schumann resonances. So these are vibrations that come out of the Earth. So that one still got me stumped. Let's see what he's trying to get at. Adrian says, so you're saying that some folks showed up and shared a certain religion and messed things up, right? I don't even know that they shared a certain religion. They colonized a messianic figure, a prophet, the son of man. But even before that, there were colonizers of certain religions that, they kept usurping what the ancients had always told us. Okay. They already knew. Now, remember, people will tell you on one hand that ancient Egypt was not all that evolved, and every building they made was just some sort of tomb. It was a mosque or a mausoleum, right? But where were cesarean sections first done? Where was brain surgery first done? In Kemet, right? So, who is that? Cleopatra had a cesarean section with Caesar's kid, who she then named Caesarion. Anyway, let's keep going. Shall we? All right. This key tells us that there is an, quote, arc of light, end quote, over the third eye, which controls all of the basic neuron activity of the pineal gland. So, okay, an arc of light over the third eye. That's kind of made me think of the Eye of Horus a little bit. You know how it's got the arch. Yes, Auntie reminds us that pine cones are still used today in spiritual practices. Yes, they are. So, the ancients say that the pineal gland controls its own activity with no arc of light. It is what it is, and it is powerful on its own. It doesn't have a light that it's not. It doesn't have an arc of light that has to go over it. That is nowhere in ancient writings. Okay, but this is not really a hill to die on, because this is just him saying this is how it works. So we'll keep going. Man knows from biochemical research that the cerebral cortex, when injected with an enzyme of serotonin, will move slightly and rotate slowly, releasing tremendous phosphine patterns. If you don't believe anything I ever have told you, and remember, I have degrees in psychology, I've studied neuroscience. What he just said is impossible. It didn't happen. It doesn't, and it's never happened. We've never done that. There has been literally, and I searched and searched because I was like, if he says scientist, does he know of a study? Of course, he never has footnotes and he never says what study, by whom, where. He just says what? From biochemical research. Okay. There is no study in existence that shows that the cerebral cortex will rotate in any way, shape, or form. There is no study about injecting the cerebral cortex with serotonin enzymes to produce light. That's phosphine, by the way, to produce light patterns. For one, and this was the first thing that stood out to me. For one, serotonin is not an enzyme. So you can't inject serotonin enzymes into something because serotonin is not an enzyme at all. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. It is created in the gut, and it has receptors in your heart and your brain. And it is the happy neurotransmitter, the feeling satisfied with life. So like when people are low in serotonin, then depression sets in. Okay, so serotonin is not an enzyme at all, right? He references neurotransmitters later, so he does know the difference between an enzyme, like a protein, and a neurotransmitter. So I don't know where he's going with. And remember, he keeps saying this is divinely inspired. I would think that Metatron, Enoch, all of these higher level, more evolved creatures would know that a neurotransmitter is not a simple enzyme. But, all right. So that's number one. Number two, no part of the brain rotates unless you yourself turn in a circle. Okay? There has been no evidence anywhere ever of this ever occurring. I could not find anything. I even asked ChatGPT, can you find something that I'm not finding? Because, Chat has access to lots of libraries, right? Chat couldn't find it either. Okay? Now, let's talk about the phosphine. Okay? So the only thing that he's partially right about is that there are certain stimuli that can create phosphine flashes in your brain and in your body. They're almost like a perceived light flash because they're internal, right? You need light to create light kind of thing. It's a chemical light. Think about like the fishes that are way down deep, dark, or like lightning bugs, right? That's a chemical light. So this is a chemical light, these phosphine flashes. So one of the ways that you can create internal phosphine flashes is through the use of psychedelics, right? Because it affects your serotonin receptors in your brain. Interesting. So I want to see where he goes with this, okay? Because it's like there's only partial correct things that I can pull out of this. Adrian says, I feel like things rattle around in my head, so I'd be surprised if something was spinning up there. You wouldn't want it to spin. You would literally, because there is no axis up there. It is connected to your spinal cord. If your brain moved even a little bit, it would mess up your spinal cord. You would fall to the ground. You would be paralyzed. Hopefully temporary. Hopefully it only moved just an inky bit, but it can't happen. But I do think it's funny that you said things rattle around in there. All right, verse 8. Medical research, here he goes with thinking he knows research. Okay, medical research has shown the rise of enzyme activities after the onset of darkness. This can be accounted for by a small increase in the concentration of neurotransmitters at a time when the receptors are maximally sensitive. See, he knows the difference. Okay, again, these are not enzymes at all. They're hormones that he's talking about. The enzymes that he's talking about are actually hormones. Let me grant him the benefit of the doubt. He's meaning to say hormones, okay? But he is correct that serotonin receptors become particularly sensitive in the dark, okay? Again, think about when you're in the dark, it's very dark, and you can see flashes. You can see little bits of light. Almost looks like if you look into the darkness, almost like TV static. There are some of us who have such sensitive serotonin receptors that we can look into the daylight sky, into the blue, and see little tiny flashes. Okay. Hi, Leon. Thanks for being here. But in the dark, these serotonin receptors become particularly sensitive. They are looking for lots of serotonin. Again, because you need to feel good to go to sleep, right? Who wants to feel anxious or angry or, all of these things? Think about when you have insomnia. As soon as you get irritated because you're struggling to fall asleep, well, then you can't go to sleep, right? So there are many directions that I could go with all of that, like how darkness affects your depression, anxiety, and paranoia. You get increased paranoia in the dark, and how the ancients built myths around particularly that. Um, and it's not just vitamin D, by the way, but that's for another time. Okay. That's because vitamin D affects your serotonin as well. Okay. So he goes on trying to sound scientific. He keeps saying the scientists have done this, the scientists have discovered that. No references. He's just saying they discovered it. They do that. They do this. No footnotes at all. So he's trying to sound scientific, but he uses the wrong words or measures. This happens over and over and over again. If you've been with me since the beginning of going through this book, you know it happens over and over and over again, which really takes any credibility that this was like a true vision from a higher entity. It kind of takes the credibility away. It's hard to validate it if he is relaying what he's being told. Now, maybe her talk might say, oh, well, these were feelings and pictures, and I'm trying to explain it using my own language. But I don't think he would ever say that based on how he tries to sound. He makes this ridiculously, excessively, unimportantly esoteric. He makes it too confusing, convoluted. He tries to sound brilliant. So I doubt he would ever say that. But he keeps getting stuff wrong. Okay. Okay. So, but the point we want to take from it, his point is that a certain light can activate the pineal. That's his theory, right? The arc of light, right? It activates the pineal. And this light activation is how telethought communication works. Telethought communications is just, I think of something and I'm communicating it to you, and like ESP, maybe, like when people talk about the ancient aliens or whatever, they had alien visits and they could hear the person talking, but it was inside their head or whatever. And then when they thought the alien could hear them, whether that's true or not, I couldn't tell you. I wasn't there. But that's what telethought is. Hi, John McQuates. Synthesis enzyme. Serotonin is produced by enzymes like tryptophan hydroxylase, TPH. Breakdown, it's broken down by enzymes like monoamine oxidase. Yes, those are enzymes that affect the neurotransmitter. So protein enzymes have to come together. There's some building blocks, right? They have to come together to make things. So in your gut, things come together, right? Which include enzymes to create a neurotransmitter. When it's broken down, it is broken down by other things. But serotonin itself is not an enzyme. Okay. So, in fact, when we look at antidepressant medications, we look at things like tryptophan, which, hey, that's what gives you the sleepies after you eat a lot of fowl. And then our old medications for depression used to be monoamine oxidase inhibitors. So just a quick. The way that a neuron works is each neuron has a space in between from one to the next. They don't connect all the way to each other, and that's called the synaptic space. It's the synapse is this space in between. And so as the chemical signal comes through one, then it fires neurotransmitters, okay, across this space. And then the next neuron, it has receptors. So that's what I mean by receptor cells. It has receptors where those neurotransmitters plug into. It's almost like They're specific receptors for specific things. Okay. So serotonin can't go into adrenaline receptors. Okay. They only go into serotonin receptors. So they go across, and this one pulls it up, and then they use the chemical neurotransmitters to fire down the nerve cell. Now, what happens sometimes when people have depression, they may not be producing enough serotonin, but sometimes what happens is when they're firing the serotonin across to get to the other side, it's not making it all the way there. And so the original antidepressant medications were monoamine oxidase inhibitors, because you think of monoamine oxidase is like a broom. It's a chemical broom that comes in and sweeps out all the stuff in between, which you want, because you don't want things, just free floating in there. And then another signal comes and it pushes this one across, and then you're all kind of messed up. Okay. You want the synaptic space clean in between each firing. And remember, this is fractional of seconds. So the monoamine oxidase inhibitor slowed down the broom. So it would give all neurotransmitters time to get to the other side. So that increased serotonin. But the thing is, it wasn't specific. It allowed all neurotransmitters extra time, which created these really weird side effects. Like if you're on an MAOI, you can't eat bananas. I mean, it created strange side effects. And that's when they came up with the SSRIs. Now we have the NSRIs, who they're serotonin specific, and they don't affect the monoamine oxidase. They affect the reuptake. So the other thing that can happen is when it shoots across, this one picks it up. And the other thing that this one does to help clean up after itself is it tries to suck back in any remnants left close to it. So that's called reuptake. So if we inhibit reuptake, it still gives that serotonin more time, and it's serotonin specific. So that's why you don't get the side effects. So sorry, I went on that little rant about what a neurotransmitter. Yeah. Yes. Phosphines are photonic. Yes. And they are visual, and they're piezoelectric. Yes. Okay. So anyway, back to that's telethought. Okay. So he's saying the specific arc of light activates your third eye, which we are assuming is the pineal, to be able to utilize telethought communication. So he says, specifically in telethought communication, the quote light, end quote, which activates the pineal gland is the Ein Sof light. Okay, so it is the pineal gland, he's saying. It's the Ein Sof light and not the conventional light of the sun, which is destructive to the memory mechanisms necessary to work with intelligence beyond our spectrum. You guys know how I feel every time he bashes the sun, because it's reminiscent to me of Christians who say everybody's a sinner, you're born a sinner. It's derogatory, it's degrading type things. It's not how Jesus acted or what he taught at all. But it's like, we as humans were created on this planet with this sun. This sun, for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, has been the source of creation and life. We cannot live without the sun's light. It helps regulate our moods. It grows our food. It helps us to synthesize vitamins. Like, the sun has been worshipped as the giver of life, because you have to have the sun for life. And then we have somebody coming in and going, yeah, but that sun, that light, I don't like it. It's not good enough. It's destructive. It's dirty. Remember the one where he said it's like not real? So I have a little bit of a problem with that, I don't know. John McQuaid says, the problem is there is only partial understanding in reductionist, materialistic medical research even today. Oh, don't get me started on medical research. I will be on a soapbox. So, oh, I'm sorry. The sun. I'm sorry. I got all off track. So, excuse me. There he goes, damning and diminishing the sun again. The sun that gives light, central to creation, life, growth, and even mood stabilization, even our sleep and wake cycles. It is very attached to how our pineal gland works. Remember, the light of the sun goes into the eye and it regulates the pineal, tells the pineal what it is supposed to do. This is how humans work. But it's bad. It's wrong. It's not the right one. Okay. This is the only sun we have, and it is ours. So why is this other light that he's talking about the only true and pure light, but the sun is destructive? Destructive to whom? I'll let you think about that. Her talk's been a little racist here, there, and everywhere. So who's it destructive to? Who is the sun bad for? I'll let you think about that one. Okay, 13. Thus, our neurocircuitry can produce its own light field, which can be regulated into a supersensitivity and subsensitivity with other levels of intelligence, parenthetically, through synaptic and postsynaptic firings. Just told you what that is. When the neurotransmitter function of the third eye area is interfaced with compatible networks of Merkaba activity. Did anybody else imagine the Borg when I read that? Plug it in, everybody's connected, right? This is starting to sound like hive mind, not telethought communication. A little bit. So let's talk how neurons work a little bit more. There are millions of them in the brain, right? I just talked to you about reuptake, monoamine oxidase, all these things, how psych meds work, all of that. Okay. So when he talks about it'll create a supersensitivity and subsensitivity through synaptic and postsynaptic firings, he's talking about it's going to become super sensitive and at the same time less sensitive when it's firing and then also when it's picking up and firing. Specifically, what that has to do with the pineal. Okay. 22. You are a sender and receiver like a radio crystal. Here we go again. You can actually place your consciousness on a wavelength and project your thoughts by modulating and demodulating your brain's signal according to the communications networks. Okay, a radio crystal. Now remember, he keeps talking about how to be one of God's chosen, to be saved, whatever, we have to give up our soul. We give up our soul and then we hand our body over to an elevated entity to then use our body as an avatar or a skin suit. Okay, that's what he's talking about. So as soon as he says you're a sender and receiver, that's what I'm thinking of. That I'm just going to open my mouth and just hold my mouth open and words are just going to be flying out of it coming from some other entity. Okay, but he's talking about a radio crystal with brain signals according to the network. Okay, so in a radio, and this is tech I don't know a lot about. I can talk about psych meds and how the brain works all day long. Radios, you may have to correct me. So in a radio, a crystal can be used in a radio because it's piezoelectric, just like in a watch, okay? Its piezoelectric properties make a frequency more precise and stable. That's what quartz is good for, right? Quartz is great for making any frequency precise and stable. That's why it's used in a lot of things. So even when people are like, oh, the crystal girlies and crystals are all woo-woo. Hey, crystal is in all of your tech, all of your high-level tech, okay? So this crystal stabilizing function in a radio works so well that early crystal radios didn't even require electricity. They just operated like a watch does on the piezo electricity. So Leon says he does not like the sun. He can live underground. Agree. There are tunnels all over the world. Go be without. Go use your artificial light and ignore the sun. So the difficulty, though, with his analogy with the radio is that the crystal in the radio is not a receiver. Okay. It's a frequency stabilizer. It's not a receiver. It's not an antenna of any kind. It causes stability of the frequency, right? The frequency passes through the crystal and it helps tune it in. It helps sharpen that wave, that frequency, okay? But the antenna catches the wave, okay? But he says something that does have some merit, okay? He says that you can actually place your consciousness on a wavelength. So I've talked about frequencies on my channel before, especially because I really, anybody who knows me knows that I hate when people weaponize spirituality, ancient tech, those kind of things. You know, when people are derogatory when they say touch grass, or they set up spirituality kind of in the same hierarchy as Abrahamic religions. Um, just things are weaponized, right? And oh, you're low vibe. Can't stand that. So I've talked about frequencies, right? So I'm not going to get too far into that. But there are scientific studies about being subjected to certain tones on certain frequencies that has an effect on the body and the mind. Okay, scientific studies, this is proven whether it feels uncomfortable or not. And I think sometimes it feels uncomfortable to people to talk about, crystals in your brain and all this, frequencies and vibes affecting your body physically and mentally, because things like this, which I just call this stuff ancient texts, or tech, not texts, ancient tech or metaphysics, like Socrates and Aristotle and Pythagoras would have called it. But, call it woo woo, I don't care. But it has been weaponized against people. And so it makes people uncomfortable then when you talk about this stuff. But back to the frequencies and the tones. After you've done this a while, after you've subjected these tones to yourself to create the specific mood or the specific change in your physical body, you can start to hear the tone internally, even when there's no sound. You can sort of, imagine a hum right now. You can hear the hum, right? So when you've done it enough, you can create the vibration. Again, you have piezoelectric crystals inside your brain. Not difficult. It is not a difficult thing. You can create sound in your brain. Now, yes, we have talked about before that there are people, actually a majority of the population, who can't imagine specific things. Maybe they can't visualize, maybe they don't have internal dialogue, maybe they can't have internal sound. They can't imagine internal sound, things like that. So if you can't do it, it's okay, right? Sometimes when you recreate it, you can recreate the feeling in your body. And that, kind of gets you humming on that right frequency. Okay. So you can then set how you feel to how you feel when you're exposed to the tone. Okay. Think about it this way. It's similar to how you can think of your favorite song. Think about your favorite song of all time. Even put it in the chat if you want to. Okay, if you're so inclined, I'm curious. Put in, your favorite song of all time. And if you don't have one, like it's a tie between these two or these three, put them all in. We're probably all love them. So when you think of your favorite song and you play it in your head, it will create an emotion. Just playing the song in your head, it's your favorite song. It creates an emotion. Okay. That right there is placing your consciousness on a wavelength, especially if your favorite song has to do with a memory, because then you're putting the frequency of your mind on the same wavelength as it was during that memory. Again, piezoelectronic crystals, electric crystals, it's easy. It just happens. So then you can have sensory memory and an emotional reaction to just thinking about the song. So if it's attached to a memory, or you're thinking about the last time you listened to it or whatever, a person, you may smell them. You may remember how it feels to hug them. If you were eating something, you may remember how it tasted, when you were eating, or if you're just laying on a bed listening to music, you can feel how you felt. So in that way, you are placing your consciousness on a specific wavelength. Oh, Stevie Nicks. Yes. Yes, Auntie. Always Stevie Nicks. Love Stevie Nicks. My favorite song, there are ties, but the one that will always create an emotional reaction for me is Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And what I always think about now is what was that movie? Oh my God. Not Bill and Ted. Had Mike Myers in it, and they're all in the Pinto and they're playing Bohemian Rhapsody. That's what I think of, because then it hits, when the beat hits and they all start headbanging. And that just makes me laugh. It's a great song to just sing out loud too. So that's one of my favorites of all time. So we're going to keep that in mind as we go forward, that there are specific ways you can kind of tune your wavelength into your own memories or your own feelings that you have. So next, he goes into this, there's a long section. Okay. Let me get a drink. Leon says he has a few. Yep. So Wayne's World, thank you, Y'all Borgen. Hey, it's good to see you, Y'all Borgen. I haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for being here. But yes, Wayne's World. That's what I was thinking. I always think of that scene, now they are tied together, which makes me laugh. So now her talk goes into certain basic transformations. Okay. So he goes into these transformations that you have to do to send and receive signals and become a radio for entities. Okay. So the mind has to go through these transformations, and it's based on Eastern scriptures. Like if you do this, the time locks on the mind are thrown open. These are his words. The time locks are thrown open. So he goes through these. This is what he titles them: the way of the Shen of the prediction, controlled by servo mechanisms or seraphs. Number 2, the way of Shen of the visual world, controlled by seraphs. Number 3, the way of Shen of the illusion, controlled by seraphs. 4, the way of Shen of existence, excuse me, controlled by Ophanim. Number 5, the way of virtuous adherers, controlled by Ophanim. Number 6, the way of the great ascetics, controlled by Ophanim. Number 7, the way of pure sound, controlled by Hayos HaKodesh. Number 8, the way of the primeval Shen, connected to Hayos HaKodesh. Number 9, the way of the supreme, connected to Hayos HaKodesh. Okay. Now let me read you something before we get into the explanation. Okay. Because we didn't need to go through every single detail of all of those for that list. Okay. Oh, that's a good point. Your set points. Know what beat per minute your brain likes the most. I would say that applies to everything, and it is attached to your pineal. Remember, because your pineal is going to be regulating these things. Okay. So if you figure out your set points, like respirations, that your body feels most healthy, your beats per minute, the way you digest food. Everybody has a specific weight that their body prefers to be at to be as healthy as possible. All of these set points um, are uniquely yours and create the healthiest you. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to read this real quick before we go into explanation. These are the necessary steps to complete the reprogramming. There we go again. And resurrection of life. I mean, doesn't it sound like he's going to put like zombies inside of us? Like dead people? I don't know. They provide and equip consciousness to travel for millions of years or for a few minutes beyond the mountaintop of the physical veil of light so that the light may radiate through you forever in all garments of light. So something intrigues me here. So what intrigues me is that Christians as a group, especially like Christian dispensationalists and evangelicals, etc., all say that it is blasphemous and just plain wrong to say there are other gods, let alone any God above Yahweh. Right? Does anybody disagree with that? Yet, we consistently see Christianity steal from cultures who are pagan and or have a pantheon of gods. So if Christianity is so great, if the Christianity that you set up as a Christian dispensationalist, a Christian nationalist, an evangelical Christian, if it is so great, why must you steal from people who you say are wrong? I mean, has anybody really thought about that? This is why I equate modern Christianity, and I can even say modern American Christianity, to white supremacy and colonizing. To me, it's the same thing. Christianity stole holidays and feast days of the pagans who have pantheons of gods. They stole the deities and then rebranded those deities as saints, angels, or demons. They just absorbed them into the Christian tradition. But wait, if they're wrong and they don't exist, why do they now exist inside of Christianity? They stole communion and made it solely a Jesus ritual. It existed before Jesus was ever born. They stole baptism by water, which existed way before Jesus was born. They stole the use of obelisks, halos, incense, and bells. All of those rituals existed well before Christianity. Okay. And those are just some minor examples. Christianity is literally a mix of Zoroastrianism, Platonic idealism, Stoic moral laws, Egyptian afterlife judgment, and the Mesopotamian flood myth. And then they call it heresy if you follow any of those other religions that they stole stuff from. Because you're wrong, but I'm going to take your stuff. Okay. So here's her talk, the Yahweh is it and don't say otherwise guy, stealing other practices. The Shen, right? Because remember, he's a dispensationalist. Yahweh is above all. There is no others. He's the head of the hierarchy. There are no other gods, yada, yada, yada. And you have to follow these Mormon traditions, Christian traditions, maybe do some Jewish Zionism stuff, but it's all Abrahamic, all of it, until he wants to steal from Eastern religions. Shen priests and the ascetics predate Christianity and Jesus. It predates Yahweh. The Shen tradition predates Yahweh worship, so ever the first mention of Yahweh, by almost 1,000 years. It predates Tibetan Buddhism. It's old. The Shen priests followed the Bon tradition. They used divination and dream interpretation, among other practices, for healing, cosmology, weather, elemental rites, ancestral communication, astrological knowledge, etc., etc. They're the priests. They do everything, right? So back in the day, the priests they were everything. They were the teacher, they were the healer, they're the doctor, they're the nurse, they're the teacher, they're the police, they're everybody, okay? Bon itself is not even monotheistic. It was polytheistic and animistic. Like the golden bulls. So, meaning that the Shen beliefs would be considered blasphemy, devil worship, and heretical by Christians today. But we can steal their Shen stuff, right? To make our little steps to sound cool, because we can steal from the Eastern religion that we then condemn. So now going beyond that, many cultures have believed in telethought communication with the divine throughout all of history. Ancient Mesopotamia, Kemet, ancient Greece, shamanic cultures, ancient India, Buddhism, and even early Judaism. They all believed in telethought communication with the divine. They thought you could think thoughts and have a conversation with the divine realm, especially talking to your ancestors. This was a practice that was done for hundreds of thousands, if not million years. Then it becomes discouraged under Christianity. Because who are you to get messages from God? Even though that's completely counter to Jesus's message. So on one hand, it's a sleight of hand. On one hand, they'll say, Jesus says you can ask God for forgiveness directly. Jesus says you can pray directly to God. Jesus says, but as soon as you try to tell a priest that you got a message from God, who are you? But I digress. Okay. The culture that interests me the most that believes in telethought communication is the United States. The CIA. They're the ones that interest me the most. Canaan, yeah. So the Stargate project started in the 1970s, and this is the CIA, and supposedly ended in 1995, except now we have DARPA. So it ended in 95, then we got DARPA. Okay. Since we couldn't remove the spirit from the practice and still get telethought communication, what do I mean by this? Telethought communication was always done as part of spiritual practice. But then when the CIA is trying to do it, they're trying to do it through psychedelics. Did I not tell you how psychedelics create some things? So they're trying to make artificial telethought communication. It didn't work that great. I'm not saying it didn't work at all. It just didn't work great, okay? They were able to reproduce some telethought communication and some astral travel, okay? But because they couldn't remove the spirit from the practice and still get this wonderful telethought communication, we decided to try to forcibly replicate it, okay? So they're working on brain-to-machine interface and neural implants, right? Because playing like the creator is all right? That's not sinful. That's not heresy or blasphemy, is it? Because it's okay when we do it. It's bad when you do it. All right. Thank you, guys. That's what I have for tonight. I appreciate you being with me for this one. Really close to an hour. Kept my timing good. This coming Sunday, my guest will be Adrian Hicks again. We're going to keep talking about all this racist stuff that's going on. I mean, they're having miscegenation talk again, but the way these pastors are talking. So we're really just going to be, and ICE, talking about a lot of that. It may end up being a series. So I really hope you guys can be here this Sunday. It's going to be live, so feel free to come in. But if you can't make it this Sunday, then next Wednesday, we're going to continue on with the Keys of Enoch. We're getting very close to being done. And then we're going to move on to the Green Book by Muammar al-Gaddafi. It's okay, y'all. Borgen, you were here right when you needed to be. All right, so I'm going to show you guys a picture of my dog. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. Let's uncover the universe together.